Howdy. Good morning to you. My name is Lynn Heygster, and it's wonderful to be here this morning. I love coming out and seeing everybody and just having this opportunity to share and connect and talk about things about life that are real. And I want to talk about love. We just finished the month of February. Valentine's Day is that thing that comes in the middle of February. And Valentine's is an interesting thing. It causes lots of different feelings and energies for people. We spent February talking about or thinking about, first when we talk about love, we started in the 1st of February talking about love itself. Where does it come from and what is it? We know it's that thing that we're made of. And then we talked about loving the self, because we have to love ourselves first, or we should. No shoulds, haves, but that's where it is. Today I want to talk about relationship, loving another or another loving us. And it comes in many forms and many varieties. When I thought about what I would speak about with this, I remembered the old show from the 60s, Love American Style. And I used to love that show, so I pulled some segments up from YouTube. And the segment that I pulled up was about this young couple getting married, and they're in California, and the girl and her parents are already there. So the groom, prospective groom, his parents have to fly in from out of town. Well, what the parents find out when they get there is that the couple's getting married in a nudist colony. And they have to adjust to that, and what's that like? My first thought was, holy smokes, I didn't remember the 60s being like that on television, but I had a great time with it. What I liked about that show was all the variety of relationship, and then at the end of every show, there was this coming together of whatever the problem had been, the couple came together at the end in love. And that's what I remember from that show. So that's kind of what I want to talk about today. We know that people come together for many different reasons and many different causes. And what I've always heard is that we do our most growth in relationship. But I have to ask you, where else can you do the best work, the fastest work, and the most volatile work in life but relationship, right? The relationships are very different. It gives us an opportunity to, I'll give you a list that I came up with thinking about what relationship is like. We test our feelings, our actions, our choices, our language, our boundaries, our addictions, our dysfunction, our enabling, and our forgiveness. And then we get to see what happens. What I find in relationship is that how often we can come nose to nose with our own reflection. And then what do we do with that? And Jill even spoke about that this morning in her talk. Because we reflect ourselves in and out all the time. Because it's really just us, right? So, we know that everybody experiences love differently for all different reasons, but absolutely love originates from the self first and inside. I heard a wonderful quote recently that I loved, and it was from Dr. Kathy Hearn. She said, "Love is the only truth between souls." And she said that to us at the internship meeting in January. And that really stuck with me. So I called her and said, "Where'd you hear that? Or is it just yours? Can I use it? And I would like to quote it." She goes, "Oh, use it, quote it." But she doesn't remember where it came from either. But it's one of those phrases that really sticks with you. And it says a lot. If we're really made from that substance within, from that substance of God, and we're that soul substance, then it really is the truth that love is the one connection of souls, and it happens up here in that higher space all the time. And wouldn't it be nice if we related from here in the moment with our friends and our people and our relations here from that soul level? So, Hugh Prather, love, the magician, knows this little trick whereby two people walk in different directions yet always remain side by side. That's honoring two people and two souls. Irish proverb, "May those who love us, and those who do not love us, may God turn their hearts. And if he doesn't turn their hearts, may he turn their ankles so we see them limping when they're coming." Okay, so in relationship, we're always working together with couples. So I have a test for you. Here's a relationship story, and tell me what you would do about this. One-way trip to Mars is destroying this man's marriage. A one-way trip to Mars could possibly spell disaster for a Utah man's marriage. Now, first of all, I have to tell you, I lived in Utah for 20 years, so I get to use this, but there's a ton of material in Salt Lake City in Utah. Ken Sullivan, a 38-year-old medevac pilot living in Utah, is delighted to have been selected as a finalist for his one-way trip to Mars. The one person who's not jazzed, his wife. Becky, whom the Mars hopeful apparently did not consult before submitting the application. Oops, communication, right? He never told her he was doing this, and he gets picked for the trip. The mission to colonize Mars, called Mars 1, won't launch the first human crew until 2024. So although the journey is still a long way off and many chances to be cut from the roster, it's already weighing heavily on Sullivan's relationship. The question is, do we get divorced now or divorced later, his wife says. If I stand in the way of his dreams and passions, then we get divorced now. So I have to be supportive. But then Sullivan says, hopefully there isn't too much hatred of my being selfish in pursuing a dream that isn't theirs. What would you do with that one? So here's another one. Erica, another potential candidate, says, I want to see the sun rise over a completely new horizon. I think that's worth any price. I have a stuffed animal, a mongoose, that my husband gave me a long time ago, and I take it everywhere with me. It's been to California, it's been to Hawaii for business trips, and I can't wait to take her to Mars. Well, guess who she ain't taking to Mars? Her husband. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting how people see relationships and what's important and where their value is, right? Loving another starts with creating bonds, and that's that soul touch. That's that what we call that magnet of love within us and how that responds and what connects out there, right? So we have bonds of babies and parents, of grandparents, of childhood friends keeping secrets. And I remembered being young with our girlfriends, and we'd sleep in the tent in the backyard. And back then the tent was the blanket over the clothesline and the flashlight. Do you think kids today would think how prehistoric that was? Do you think they would do something like that? Bonding today with kids is matching tattoos and genital piercing. We are not in Kansas anymore. I have sons. When they come home walking like this, you know. Dating. Sorry. Those days are like, I'm glad they're in their 30s now. Dating. Dating is that playground where we get to look for someone else to validate our love. And how does it feel and look, and how does it play back to us? Validates our love and gives our love meaning. But there is always sometimes this game of when someone projects their ideas, their perceptions, their desires onto someone else, and that's all they see. And what happens when that person doesn't play that out, doesn't become that? And then what happens? Or what happens when you've decided to be someone else or something else because you think that's what will attract the other person? And what happens the day that your mask falls off? And what's left? So we live from love. Living from love as the truth of who we are, as the foundation of the self, can also mean living fearlessly and speaking the truth of who you are right from that source, right from the beginning of a relationship. I know people who have, really come around the circle with that and found that place. And they found that relationship and love still showed up. They could be themselves and they were honest with it. And that was good. And love came. And I have a wonderful reading from Creative Mind and Success. And the book is over there because I was nervous and forgot to bring it up. But what Dr. Ernest Holmes talks about as our founder, talks about the fact that love really begins from within. It's a vibration of who we are and what we are. And if that isn't recognizable to us, what are we sending out? We can only connect with that vibration out there that really matches that vibration within us of love. And when we learn to love ourselves and what that's about, then that is what vibrates out. And then from that we can learn to love others, and then they love us back. I love that song that we teach children, that sometimes we now sing it at our center. I love myself enough so that I can love you and that you can love me. And that's really what that reading was going to be about. So I just impressed myself. So the ability to really attract love in our life is directly tied to our ability to love ourselves. And what are we doing with that? How are we using that? How is it coming and showing and reflecting back to us? When we look in the mirror and we say, I love you, and it's really coming from that place within, that is that deepening. And that's that essence, and that's that beginning of love, that is that vibration that moves. Carl Rogers, a psychologist, does a lot of work around love. And he says that when a person becomes married, they have such high expectations of being loved and supported by their spouse and being fulfilled by the love of the spouse. But he constantly gets this question, what is love? And love is that essence that helps, well, babies thrive with love. Without love and touch, they don't thrive. And people, loving our families, loving our friends, is a very vital part of life. It's healing, it's enlightening, it's opening. The sky sometimes is bluer, the birds are singing when love is really present as a part of who we are. He has two elements that he says are very important in love, and they are similar to each other, so I would like to read them so I get this clear. The first is healthy empathy. To sincerely see things from the perspective of the other, seeing others' experiences and feeling them the way the other feels them while still maintaining boundaries of the self. Empathy requires no judgment, criticism, or preconceived assumptions. This is hearing, seeing, and feeling the other person's experience. That's healthy empathy. The second thing is unconditional positive regard. I love this term, only heard it a couple years ago from Reverend Donald. When I first heard it, I wasn't so sure what I thought about it, and it has taken actually a long time to settle in with me because it brings me to a place of neutrality. I'm not judging, and I'm not trying to create anything around it. Okay, where are we here? Okay. Unconditional positive regard shown to those we love gives them plenty of room to mature without their own values and beliefs intruding in the other person's process of healing, growth, and maturity. Their personal growth, ways of learning, believing, and evolving belong to them. There's no interference in the process with our own disagreement or beliefs. Our loved ones do not have to believe, think, or see things as we do to have a personal approval. So the person is always of value and worth, no matter how different two people are together. And I really like that. And this is science of mind, right? This is Ernest Holmes saying that we are loving and accepting and allowing of spiritual growth in each other because we're really one. We are all from that one. I read this in preparing for this and reading that over and over again a couple times. It brings me into, well, there was that mirror. Highlighted, emphasized, but magnified, lights, right, knows my own reflection because of a relationship that I'm involved in right now. So I'll tell you a quick little story of mine. I am dating my former husband. And we were married for 20 years. We were divorced for 17. And I didn't know this was going to happen. And it's been really just recently kind of an up and down kind of thing. Because we have now 37 or 40 years of knowing each other and what everything was in the past. But the time that we were divorced, it really laid the ground for some healing work and stuff we're doing now together. And I consider us kind of some of the lucky ones because what's happened is that all the relationships and events and things that we went through during that time apart really gave us an opportunity to make choices for healing work, for the kind of work and things we were going to do. And it gave us a chance to play out who we were with other people. And we grew through all of that. And so when we had our first grandchild, it kind of brought things back together again in talking. And what we found, because that also the time apart allowed us, through some of the healing and stuff, my fears about things and about him went away. And he changed. If I hadn't felt that, I wouldn't be there. I could feel that. And what we found is that when we began talking, we were able to actually talk and not react. And we were able to hear each other. And we were able to respond as adults and not like we did 20 years ago as kids. And when things are disagreeable and things don't come up and he senses something from me from the past and I sense something from him from the past, I'm not afraid to point it out. He still is, which is okay. I'm not afraid to point it out. But I've had my moments of crying and trying to figure out what the heck's going on because it is different, but it's been good. And so we've allowed this time of forgiveness. We've allowed an opportunity. Even reading through this has provided me an opportunity to remember that I'm willing to give this a second chance and see who this person is, to see who I am, and where does love. And if I don't believe this philosophy, why am I here? And so what I'm learning in this is allowing me to open up and see what's in the essence of him as I bring love into this. And if we don't work, we don't work. And we're good with that, and that's what we've talked about. And so that's allowing each of us to grow. He's not as involved in science of mind, and I've come to realize that's okay, just like positive regard, right? And I have to believe that and trust that, and I do. So that's a fun story. I gave my mom a book for Mother's Day last year called Unlikely Friendships. And it's a book that is all about animals that are supposed to eat each other and not like each other. And the front of the book is a monkey hugging a bird, and the bird is just there, being loved by this little monkey. What I love about this book is that it's nature that shows us at its best that everything is one and everything is love, and that even these animals, given the opportunity under these interesting scenarios, can just love each other and have compassion and take care of each other. Some of these stories, they're beautiful. And so, how often can we love other people when we want to eat them instead? I mean, some of these relationships and some of these things. But what's inside of them is that essence of love, right? That we're all made of and that we all come from. I read something recently from Dr. Christensen, or Reverend Christensen. Is he a doctor? I don't know. I should find that out. Okay, yes, he is. All right. Making love a spiritual practice. You could add that to the list of prayer, of visioning, of meditation, of movement, and love as a spiritual practice. And so, if we run through a list of what love can be or what the practice can be, love is having a positive regard for another as you have for yourself, or having a positive regard even for yourself. How's that? Love is the desire to know another as much as you know yourself. Love is the ability to care deeply and fully. Love is vulnerable, accepting, yet strong. Love is not afraid to tell the truth. Love is the most powerful force in the world. Love as a spiritual practice. One last quote that I love that is by Samuel Lover. I just thought that was cute. Come live in my heart and pay no rent. Isn't that sweet? Come live in my heart and pay no rent. So for this week, can you make love a spiritual practice? Think of this question. How do you live the spiritual practice in your life? And how do you practice being love when you don't feel love or feel loving? So how do you practice being love in those moments where you don't feel loving? Namaste. The love in me sees the love in you.